the summer of 2004, the University of Pittsburgh had the unique opportunity to take 12 university faculty members from around the country to Mongolia on an introductory field research trip. Funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Fulbright-Hays Field Trips Abroad, 2 departments within the University of Pittsburgh, the University Honors College, and the Asian Studies Center joined forces to make the goal of helping academics incorporate Mongolian studies into their core curriculum a reality. The purpose of the trip was twofold: to introduce new scholars to the field and to create an academic website that would serve to highlight the research of the scholar participants. Those chosen for the trip represented a diverse range of disciplines, interests, and goals. Some came with the desire to study herding practices, or for the opportunity to see various remote archaeological sites. Some came with an interest in exploring the reemergence of Tibetan Buddhism in Mongolia, and still others were looking at the dynamic and shifting role of women, political culture, and economics as Mongolia transitions from a former communist system into a democratic, market-based economy. Yet what was common amongst all members was a shared enthusiasm for the rigors of traveling in a developing country and the spirit to contemplate their experience as opportunities for new scholarship. Each participant came to the program ready to give a lecture on their research interests and goals for the trip, and shared these thoughts during field talks that were held each day. The field talks became an important and integral part of the research experience as they served to give everyone a clear idea about each participant's background, as well as open the door toward future collaborations between members of the group. The trip began with a 4-day briefing in the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, where the participants met with governmental officials, international diplomats, Mongolian academics, prominent business people, and representatives from non-governmental organizations. These first few days served to introduce the participants to the wide range of issues in Ulaanbaatar and highlighted the internal complexities of modern Mongolia before they headed out to the remote regions of the countryside. Mongolia is a land of sharp contrasts and diverse populations. The northwest province of Bayan-Olgi is home to ethnic Kazakh Muslims, who in addition to making their living through herding and game hunting, enjoy a rich musical tradition. The participants spent a full week exploring the Altai mountain region, traveling by Russian vans over hundreds of miles of roadless terrain to meet eagle hunters, dine with the families of young musicians, and revel in the beautiful landscape. They visited the Shavit Herhan region, home to thousands of ancient petroglyphs found deep in the mountains. They also enjoyed their first experience with Mongolian cuisine in the countryside, dining on the nationally loved mutton dumplings known as buz and drinking sheep's milk tea. After a brief stopover in Ulaanbaatar, the participants went back on the road and spent a week exploring the Gobi Desert. The first stop in their journey was an international music festival, where they were able to join with a group of European and Mongolian musicians to hear New Age continental music, Mongolian throat singing, and musicians playing folk instruments such as the horsehead fiddle. The group also had the benefit of enjoying a local Nadam festival, celebrating Mongolia's national sports of wrestling, horseback riding, and archery, and later witnessed a traditional shaman ceremony. From there, the participants traveled to the renowned Flaming Cliffs dinosaur locality, first excavated by the American naturalist Roy Chapman Andrews in the late 1920s. The Flaming Cliffs, still considered one of the largest fossil sites in the world, gave the participants the opportunity to experience the vastness of the Gobi Desert and to stay for several days in well-appointed ger camps. Participants also had their first taste of fermented mare's milk, known as Irak, with local herders that kindly invited the group into their homes. The last leg of the journey took the participants via an old Soviet Antonov airplane to the far northern city of Moron. Participants were fortunate enough to visit famous ancient deer stone sites, one of which was under excavation by the American archaeologist Dr. William Fitzhugh of the Smithsonian Institute. Dr. Fitzhugh generously gave a short field talk to the participants regarding his work there in the Erkel Valley in his ongoing anthropological work throughout Mongolia.
I've been interested in looking into the question of whether some of these deer stone imagery might relate to things in East Asia and in the North Pacific, specifically possible connections to early Eskimo art as a stimulus to the development of art in other areas.
From there, the participants traveled on to the beautiful lake Hofskol, where they boarded a Russian fishing vessel and traveled up lake to the encampment of research scientist Dr. Clyde Goulden from the Philadelphia Academy of Sciences. Dr. Goulden invited the participants to spend several days camping within his compound and showed the scholars the research zones he is studying regarding the effects of herding on the permafrost terrain in northern Mongolia. The ability to meet Goulden proved to be an invaluable experience to the participants and provided them the opportunity to recognize the delicate ecological balance and challenges Mongolia faces in sustaining its frail environment. Upon returning to the southwestern shore Ger Camp, the participants spent several days exploring the lake region, including a horseback ride to visit local indigenous reindeer herders. From there, the participants returned to Ulaanbaatar for several days of research and website development workshops. The trip served as a catalyst to help the participants envision new areas of research and collaboration, and gave them an opportunity to see a vast swath of Mongolia that few people ever have the chance to see. The Contemporary Mongolia Project continues to provide inspiration for those scholars who participated in the journey and will be an information resource for others who wish to incorporate Mongolian studies into their coursework in the future.
When I was a child, I read books by Roy Chapman Andrews on his travels in Mongolia, and I had a large stack of National Geographics, which I went through religiously, reading the articles on people traveling to far places. And Mongolia and Inner Asia as a whole has always been fascinating for me. This has been the trip of a lifetime. The experiences I've had in Mongolia as part of this project, I can't say just how much this really means to me, but it's certainly something that is going to enrich my teaching and I hope enrich my research in the future.
Mongolia is a really fascinating place. I think the reason for that is that it enables one to readily integrate the intellectual experience that is characteristic of university life with the experiential dimension that is characteristic of a foreign experience with a capital F. In Mongolia, we have intellectual issues associated with politics, transition economies, environmental issues, the emergence of tourism. Is it possible to develop a country and preserve those pristine areas that are essential if tourism, for example, is to be one of the more significant economic ventures in the country? But combined with that is the possibility for living close to the land as Mongolians do in what is essentially the last nomadic pastoral society on earth. And coming to Mongolia, one lives simply and has to cope with an element of physical adversity that is not characteristic with living in an American city or even in American society. These aspects of study, international study in Mongolia, are compelling, I think, and they should be called to the attention of faculty. And as a result, programs like the Fulbright-Hays Contemporary Mongolia program that emerged from the Honors College at the University of Pittsburgh are especially important.